Hi everyone, I'm Lori Frank from Lori Frank Mediation and Consulting, and you are watching a continuing series where I am going around our local community and interviewing other professionals who contribute in some way to supporting parents who are separating. So today I am meeting with Catherine from 4Acre Counselling. Catherine has been a counselor for quite some time, and part of your work, you work with many different people, but part of your work is with couples.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, and often couples that are trying to figure out if they can stay together, or if that's not going to happen, then I also offer how to separate well so that we can maintain relationship, particularly if they're in a co-parenting situation.
Yeah, because that's so important, is how to do this well, how to do it in the best interest of the kids. What is this going to look like moving forward?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what drew you to counseling in the first place?
So it's basically kind of been in me from the beginning, I would say. So when I was young, I was identified, in elementary school as a natural helper, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And then I'm from Victoria, so I went to Arbutus and then to Mount Doug. And back at that time was when the peer counseling project became a really big thing. And UVic was one of the worldwide centers for that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I became a part of their pilot project for being trained to be a peer counselor. Oh. So I was one of the first peer counselors in grade 12, so I had this great communication and counseling training.
Yeah.
And then from there I went on to UVic, where I helped found the peer counseling program up there, and then became a trainer for trainers. And then, so
you've got quite the history.
So it kept building. So I was really fortunate because I naturally got to be a part of something that I thought I would like to do professionally, but often you don't get a chance to really know if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so then I did an undergraduate in psychology and sociology, went overseas, did some other things, and then I ended up doing my master's in counseling psych. So doing counseling and communication has always been, I just always knew that's what I wanted to do.
You are.
Yeah, and I never really thought of like, oh, maybe I'll be an engineer. I never had that capacity anyway. So, so I was always on that track. Yeah.
So in your counseling, with all of the training and background that you have, do you use a particular therapeutic approach, or are you bringing a few approaches together, or how do you do that?
I'm definitely, I'd say I'm eclectic for sure. For me, it is like I have just a huge natural curiosity about people and understanding who they are and why they are how they are. Recently, and I think this is probably really relevant to the part around helping couples and families, I've done some extensive training in narrative therapy at the Vancouver School of Narrative Therapy. Yeah. And so that's really also got me onto this whole kind of a different approach of working with couples in how to build a relationship and make a new relationship when they're going into a separated or divorced situation.
Right.
And Stephen Madigan, who's one of the he's the head of the Vancouver School of Narrative Therapy, has a thing called relational interviewing. So with couples that are doing that, it's about really wanting to help couples find a place where they can stand together. People are often very fatigued from the conflict. Yes. As I'm sure you are in that place with them with the mediation.
Yeah.
So it's about having them kind of like find a place to stand together, because there was a point where they did come together.
Yeah.
Wasn't their intention when they got engaged or married, like, oh, we're going to not like each other.
Yeah. This isn't going to work 10 years from now.
Yeah, like, we're going to be mean to each other. That's that wasn't what the intention was. So it's about having them kind of reclaim some of that.
Right.
Because I think the erroneous belief is that when you separate or divorce, then it's a broken relationship. But it actually just becomes a different kind of relationship.
Right.
Particularly with children. And it's more complicated going forward. And so actually having more of a strong basis of communication and how to navigate children's schedules, people getting new partners, you need more capacity, not less.
Yeah. I think that's a real key point. It's a switch in the way that you're viewing the relationship. I think you're right. A lot of people think it's the end of a relationship when really it's just a new beginning.
Yes.
It's just going to look different from now on, because when you are parents, that's it. You are parents. And even as your children get older, you continue to be parents, even into adulthood with your kids. Things like graduations and weddings and births and all of those things still tie you together. So So that sounds great. The idea of, okay, it's not the end of a relationship, it's the beginning of a different relationship. And what does that look like for us?
Exactly. And again, with children, I mean, what I always say to couples too is, so you chose to get married and have kids. Those kids didn't choose to get born into this family.
Yeah.
So you have a responsibility. So your relationship hasn't worked out. That's okay. And again, I think there's a lot of individual blame, but I like to turn that around as well. It's about, the relationship is in relationship with a lot of relationships.
Yes.
And life's really complicated nowadays, you know? So the pressures with work and finances and kids, all the activities kids do, and people, also pursuing their own interests outside of the family.
Yeah.
But it's that you have a responsibility to make this the best, because you're the only parents these children are going to have.
Yeah.
And you can recreate a type of family, and that, again, it's not two parents being together, and that's okay, and that happens a lot, but how can we still make it so that we can enjoy all those experiences and actually make a way of being in a different relationship where we can still access, as former partners, the good things that we did like about each other, instead of losing everything, which is often what happens when it's like it's the divorce and it's over.
Yes.
And that's why it's just so hard and painful.
Yeah. So that brings me to my question then around your role in the mediation process, because when I'm working with couples in mediation, I'm not counseling. We do talk about the past or things that have contributed to where they are now, because sometimes we need to go there in order to move ahead with decisions and that kind of thing. But when I'm finished with them, that's it. It's the end of our work together.
Right.
So, so what role do you see a counselor playing in mediation, even from before potentially they come to mediation and then throughout the process?
I think for me, one of the pieces is that with separating, if a couple comes, most couples do come to couples counseling when it's too late. That's just the reality. So I'm always like, if you had just come 3 years ago, so it's often we are at that point. So what I offer, which is quite, I think, often revolutionary for people, is like, and if the choice isn't that we can move together, you can't move forward together, then how do we separate well? And so that can be also when I can refer to mediation, right? Like this doesn't have to become like you each go to your lawyers and this becomes a combative situation.
Yeah.
And one of the pieces that I've really noticed is when people get into the process of trying to come up with like legal separation agreements and making those decisions, it's often their reactions to that is actually not about that information. It's about the hurts or the unseen piece that, they're wanting something from their partner that they've never gotten.
Yes.
And then it plays out in that legal document.
Yeah.
Which is not helpful.
No.
So part of what I see my role is helping people slow that down and go back and figure out what is it that you're really wanting and needing. And it's usually an emotional need. And so how can we get that met so that takes the kind of the power and the reactivity out of when we go to that legal document.
Yes.
The other piece I would say is super important is helping the couple or the individual, depending, because sometimes I work individually as well at that point, is what do you really want? Like, what's the end picture? What do you want it to look like?
Yeah.
Instead of this immediate hurt and pain that you're in, right?
Yeah.
It's like, because we can get there. There's ways that we can navigate to get what people want. Yeah. And if it's being in a place where we're not going to be best friends, but we'll be able to be, we can be at a family dinner for our daughter, and that can be a pleasant experience, but to get the bigger picture, because sometimes there's just too much damage gets done in the separation divorce process that we can't reclaim it later.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely, in mediation, I try and help people to focus in that way, asking those kinds of questions of what do you envision life looking like a year from now or 5 years from now, so that they can, when they are making decisions and trying to come to agreement on things, they've got that in their mind of, does this then meet that need?
Right.
But again, I'm working with them in a very short amount of time and in an intense way. So, I can definitely see how, especially co-parents, how counseling after the fact and before as well, like you were saying, where you can prepare to go and kind of get into the mindset you need to be in.
Yes.
But then after, there may still be a lot of work to do.
And I think that's the thing, people come up against stuff that they can't imagine. So now we've gone through the pain and the difficulty, and let's say we're separated and we live with there's different family homes, and we're navigating kids' schedules and we're following those things. But then it's like, there's just stuff that you don't expect that comes up, or again, a pattern that you've always had just keeps
Yes.
playing out, and it's
Yeah.
just like, but we're divorced, and yet we're still we're still in this, right?
still in it,
And so it's
yeah.
like, and
That
that just
part
takes
doesn't go away.
exactly unless we resolve what was underneath that, and
Yes.
that takes away from everybody's quality of life, you know,
Absolutely.
because that's just a lot of energy and it's unpleasant, and it's like I got out of the relationship to not have to be in this, you
Yeah.
know. So how do we change that and unhook from things so that it can go forward differently?
Yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes there's a myth that couples counseling is just for couples. Whereas, there is an opportunity for co-parents. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you would do it individually, but potentially at times coming back together
Absolutely.
to work on their relationship as co-parents together. So it's not just for couples who are potentially separating or needing to work on something. It can be for after the fact.
Exactly, and again, it's supporting and trying to nurture that new relationship that will actually be very new, right? That because now we're divorced and now we're trying to find a way to co-parent, and there's stuff that comes up, but you don't go to couples counseling when you think like, well, we dissolved our coupleship, right?
Yes, we're done with that.
Right, but in fact, you're not, because you are going together in a different way. And I think one of the pieces that I really work with couples too is talking about there's the individuals, but then there's this thing called their relationship, which actually is a third thing and exists outside of them.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can really help them too to make decisions of what do you want to do for the relationship in terms of like for our whole family versus what I need for what I would choose for myself.
Yeah.
Right? And that also gives a different perspective sometimes. It's almost like for the greater good. And we maybe make some sacrifices, but then it facilitates the long-term goals and achieving, more kind of harmonious relationship than if it's only just about, well, I never got what I wanted. Or, you hurt me and I can't get over that, or that kind of thing.
Yeah. That's great. So besides couples counseling or counseling for co-parents, you work in other areas of counseling as well. What are some of the other areas that you work in?
I do. I see people in lots of capacities. I do quite a bit of work in grief. So it's not a specialty, but it's certainly I've got quite a bit of experience in it. And again, through my narrative therapy training, have a really different way of approaching that, which is again, instead of that whole thing of trying to figure out a way to, let go and finish and have
move
it be
through stages.
It's more about how can you also include that person that you've lost and bring them forward in your life in certain rituals or ways that you want to, if you've lost a parent but your children never knew their grandparent very well, what are ways in which that becomes a part of your family culture so that it's also that person they're always going to be alive in you, and so how do you use that in a way that can transform just the loss into also something that enriches life?
Yes.
So that's one of the pieces I do. I have a lot of clients because it's just the reality of life today that deal with anxiety. So work a lot with anxiety, which again comes from many different places. So I can have 5 clients that all I get a thing that says they're all coming for anxiety, but it's
totally different.
Yeah, and how it manifests and what they need.
Yes.
And relationship to self, that's I say I'm a relationship counselor because for me it's all about relationships, relationship to myself, to my partner, to friends, to my work, to whatever it is. So just so many of those components, and a lot of what the research is around today is a lot of people come with things that are, we talk a lot about trauma nowadays, but it can be smaller things that have a similar impact. And so I work a lot too on regulation. There's a lot of, in our society, we've become really unregulated in terms of even in our nervous system, right? Like everyone's on high activation.
Yeah.
And
go.
Exactly. And always like
connected all the time.
Exactly. On your computer. Right? So you're always not ever just getting to have that, even getting in touch enough to know, so anxiety is a lot around that, right?
Yes.
People are hyper alert or hyper vigilant and don't even know how to let themselves be in touch with that. So so that's a lot of piece of just even the awareness of bringing that to people as a new piece of how we can then get the control for ourselves, because then that's something they'll take that will help them for the rest of their life. Again,
Absolutely,
they don't see me for a long time either, right?
Yeah.
I have lots of clients that I love. They check back in, I'll see them and then a couple of years later they'll be back and come for 3 sessions and we do a tune-up, and then so that kind of thing is I find that really rewarding to get to be a part of people's life journey as well, not just a crisis management thing. Although of course that if you can really, when I've had people come that are feeling so unwell in themselves, and even after one session, just them knowing that maybe there's some hope or there's a way forward. That always feels like, I always feel like it's a lovely thing when I feel like, oh, great, I offered at least some relief. And how we do the work going forward is going to be hard. But even in that moment, just that it's like, okay, there's some other possibility when people feel just like, oh no, maybe there's no way.
Yeah. That's great to know, because I think that sometimes we think of couples counseling as, or the couple's relationship is kind of living in isolation from all of these other contributing factors, where potentially it is one of their anxiety that is actually what needs to be addressed, or a grief from the past, some traumatic event that they've carried forward, or like you said, just those little things that accumulate that we kind of carry around, and then we get into a relationship and they come to the forefront.
Yes, exactly. Or even, I have lots of couples that, or I've had a number of couples where they got married, like they were super happy, things were great, and then they had kids, but they came faster than they expected and more than they wanted.
Right.
So all of a sudden they have 3 little ones, and I also talk about families. It's a competition of needs, and kids always win, right? Because their needs, and especially with babies, their needs have to be met. So so it's just, no one did anything wrong. It's just life happened. And then, but they lost connection with each other, and the stresses and the difficulties that come with that. And then often, as humans are, we try and get our needs met somehow. And sometimes people get them met by, all of a sudden they put their energy into, like, now they're like a marathoner, but they're spending all their time training because they're not getting their needs met at home, but then the partner at home feels abandoned, and why do I have to be with, and then it just builds up all these resentments. And so it's just like, actually, if we could just come back, like this was a hard stint and you've got these 3 little kids, but okay, let's find a way to reconnect, to find a way to go forward. But it's been tough. There's been lots of hard stuff that's gone on. But that happens so much in all of our lives.
For sure.
And loss of a parent in the midst of something else, and my partner didn't show up for me in the way I needed or wanted, and then I hold this hurt. Which then, any of those things just really make their intimacy deteriorate between people. Right? And then we're like, why am I even with you? And it's being in a fulfilling couple relationship takes effort. I think that's the other thing. One of the things I love that Stephen Madigan says is he hates date night, the concept of date night, because he says it's like you think you can check a box and then it's like, oh, relationship's been taken care of. It takes a lot more than like 2 Fridays in in 3 months to really nurture a relationship. And that's the other thing. We're so busy. And again, the kids, we have to take care of them, but where do couples then really need to take responsibility to take care of themselves and their relationship, which then is actually what feeds the children and all the other things, right? But we often put our attention out into the other stuff, and then we neglect the primary relationship.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for all of that wonderful information about what you do. I think that it's so valuable, not just in the mediation process. I mean, I see so much value throughout that process for a lot of people to be accessing counseling before or after, or sometimes in the middle. We might take a break and say, you know what, you need to do a bit of work, and then we're going to come back in a month or 2 months, whatever it is. So it's just such a valuable resource through a difficult time. Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you. Yes. And again, I appreciate knowing that there's people in the community that are, again, wanting to help couples do things in a way that's more, amicable and preserves relationship. So it's really nice for me to know as couples are coming to that place. And of course, there's lots of dynamics around that, but that there's a safe place and a place where they can be supported in making those positive choices with each other.
So if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach you?
The best way is probably my phone number, and that would be, should I give that now?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, you go right ahead.
It's 250-858-2581, and you can call directly. I have a confidential voicemail, so if I don't answer, you can leave a message, and then I'll just get back to you. I have a website as well. It's fouracrecounselling.com. And it's still under construction in terms of the content, but there's definitely a bit of information on there as well.
Great. And I'll make sure I put all of that up under this video so that you can easily find it. Well, thanks so much, Catherine. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you, Lori.
You're welcome.